back for the final session. This is the last stint. I know people have been going for planes and dashing off, but there's some good content still to come. What we're going to do now is we're going to turn our attention for the final section to look at some of the Western markets and pick out specific aspects and opportunities of that. And to kick things off, I'd like to welcome to the stage John Joseph from the UKTI, who will talk a little bit about UK and some of the stuff they're doing there. So if we could put your hands together for one, give him a bit of applause. Thank you very much. It's a long walk there. Go for it, John. You at the podium? Yeah. Your mic's up, okay. Yeah,
that's fine. Very good afternoon to one and all. I'm Joseph John, a trade and investment advisor for the UK government's trade and investment team based out of Hyderabad. The purpose for me to be here at this particular event is primarily to look at creative companies who are interested to look at the UK, and also to help British companies who are interested in collaborating with Indian companies as well. So that's the primary objective here. So before I could dive on, I just want to highlight the next, go on to the next slide. That's fine. Right, I just want to start off with a quick overview of what the UK economy is in terms of gaming. UK continues to be highest spenders in Europe in terms of gaming. We have significant amount of users still on console, which is diminishing at this point in time, but at the same time, we've got a significant amount of smartphone users in the UK. We also have about 34 million active gamers in the UK, of which 66% of them are regularly paying to play games across all platforms. According to the recent report, we had about 13% rise in the total amount of spends on games in the UK. We in the UK have been known for innovation for a very long time, for things that we have done, be it the steam engine, be it anything that is innovation, it's always related back to the UK. In terms of gaming, we have over 30 years of experience. We've got great talent pool. If you're looking at one of the top universities for gaming, which is Abertay University in Scotland, that's one good example of the talent available there. Sheffield Hallam University has got some fantastic courses in terms of gaming as well. So the talent definitely is not a problem in the UK. We are a lot more mature market in comparison to the other countries. We also do have a fantastic business ecosystem, and what I mean by that is we've got strong clusters in the UK. You might be looking at London, obviously, but you've got other clusters like Manchester, Coventry, Warwickshire. These are other interesting clusters, including Bristol and Bath, wherein you can work in an ecosystem, try and develop your games, grow more in terms of technology as well, and deliver a stronger and more value for money games. In addition to that, the most interesting part is we have rolled out the 4G plan already in the UK, and in the near future, we're going to roll out the 5G plan as well. Now, just to take a step back in terms of what UK Trade and Investment does, we are the government agency. Our objective is to help UK companies succeed in global markets. At the same time, we are also very interested in helping global companies invest into the UK. Some of the recent examples that I can quote for investments coming into the UK would be Konami from Japanese gaming giant. King.com is another fantastic example who have come into the UK and use UK as a global platform to advocate their games. Now, how can UKTI help Indian companies or any global company for that matter? Now, even if you are at a stage wherein you're interested in looking to expand outside your country, we can still go ahead and help you understand what are the comparative analysis between UK and any other preferred destination of your choice. We can give you free reports on that as well. We can do a bit of research on that and come back to you. If you've already decided that you want to do business in the UK, we can definitely help you expedite your process of setting up business in the UK, be it registering a bank account, going with the registration process in the UK. The ease of business in the UK is significantly high. We are rated as one of the best in terms of the other European countries. We are rated as #1 in terms of ease of doing business in the UK. And say, for example, if you are a company who's already established in the UK, we can help you expand as well. We are the network of networks. We can help you accelerate, move faster, and get into a global domain as well, global presence as well. Now, one important thing which I would like to quote here is, say for example, if you are an Indian company who is considering to set up a presence in the UK at some point in time, and no matter where the parent company is, once you've registered a company in the UK, you automatically become a valued UK company, which means that you get the privileges what the other UK company gets as well. In simple terms, let's assume a few years down the lane, once you're doing well in the UK, you've got other interests to do business somewhere in Venezuela, for example. And you can use UKTI to help you do the groundwork in those countries and expand in about 98 countries where we are actually present. So that's the offering in terms of investment. Talking in terms of trade collaborations, what we do for British companies, we highlight what opportunities are available in those various countries where UKTI operates in. So let's assume that one of the key things which evolved in this particular conference was we were looking at a significant amount of game developers who are having challenges in identifying the right publisher who could go ahead and gain or project a significant amount of visibility for those gaming companies. Now that could potentially be an opportunity for a UK company. And we use a business opportunities portal which is closed within our network. And we can highlight an opportunity for a British company to do business here in India. And if that works, everybody wins because we believe that India is great, UK is great, and together we can be greater. The other interesting things that we also offer in terms of the UK government is we have something called the Global Entrepreneurs Program. This particular program enables those companies, startups who are interested in setting up a global presence in the UK. Now, if that's the case, if you are looking to convert your global HQ in the UK, you get incentives to it. You have a certain number of deal makers who work for the government. Now, these deal makers are entrepreneurs, versatile entrepreneurs who've been very successful and now working for the UK government part-time. The objective for them is to bring other entrepreneurs from other parts of the world into the UK. And once you set up business there in the UK, we can help you accelerate and move into other parts of the world as well, gain some visibility using UK as a springboard, not just to the Europe, but to the world as well. The other thing which came up during the part of the conference for the last 2 days was funding as well. Now, if you were to go into the GEP program, the Global Entrepreneurs Program, you would have the opportunity to raise some funding as well. Funding opportunities are also available under this particular program. Over the last 8 years, we've raised about 1 billion in terms of funding for the Global Entrepreneurs Program. Now, why should you invest in the UK? Of course, yeah, it's a fantastic geographical location to connect between the East and the West. At the same time, it's got a fantastic economy in terms of the best in G7 in 2014. You've got fantastic tax credits as well. The government has recently issued a budget for about £8 million just for the gaming sector, of which 4 million comes directly for the prototype companies who are wanting to build a prototype in the UK. So those are the initiatives which are taken by the government in order to drive this particular sector. And UK wants to contribute in every possible way into your innovation and to help you scale to a global level. You also have talent, access to talent, which I've already mentioned, and the easiest place to do business is something which has already been mentioned as well. So this particular session is just to talk about what the opportunities are there in the UK. I'd be more than happy if you do have any specific queries in terms of tax or in terms of setting a business in the UK across locations. You've got my contact details here, and we want you to do well in what you do. And if you're thinking of expanding, think of the UK. And if you're thinking of the UK, think of UK Trade and Investment. Thank you.
Very proud to be a UK entrepreneur. Has anybody got a question at all for John? Yeah, one question there. Go on. You have a question?
Yes. So how do we get in touch with you? Sure. I mean, that's my contact details. Yes, I'm based out of Hyderabad. But I've got my colleagues based out of in 7 multiple locations within the country. I'm very much accessible, so you can just connect and we can take the conversation. Fantastic, thanks.
All right, okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thanks.
Next up, we're going to talk a little bit more about sort of trends and the market. We're going to take a European perspective.
Just give him a mic.
Are we doing? We're just miking. Okay. So we've got a case of 2 Vlads here. This is very interesting. So unfortunately, due to some visa complications, Vlad Micu of Creative Rebel isn't here, but we do have a very able replacement in the shape of Vlad Micu, who is a very experienced guy in the mobile and the general games business.
Yeah.
He's going to talk a little bit.
I'm hoping.
He's travelled in India a lot as well, and he's travelled around Europe and works in various companies. He's going to come and talk a little bit about European trends as soon as he's mic'd up. So, okay.
Yeah.
Phil, right,
it works.
Trying to give me a phone.
That's all right. What, you ready?
Go.
Yes, always.
Okay, so please give the man a warm round of applause as he makes his way to the stage. This is Vlad Micu. He's more of a sorcerer.
Was that you or was that me? I think there's something wrong with my mic.
No, you're right.
Sensitivity is too high.
Good.
Yeah?
You're good.
Okay.
Go for it, Vlad.
Oh, clicker. Awesome. Someone forgot their badge here, by the way. Oh, Chris. Oh, all right. Cool. So yeah, can someone turn down the volume of my mic? I am very tonal, so this is gonna like, okay, cool, that's better, thank you. So yeah, hi, my name is Vlad Micu. I'm currently in between jobs, hence I'm a consultant. And I'm here to talk about, well, it says the European indie perspective, but what I'd like to talk about is particularly the perspective that I've gathered working in Finland for the past year. So hence, the talk is building a solid foundation for a game startup based on the lessons that I've learned from running one in Finland last year. Rest assured, if there's stuff in the presentation that you want to get access to, I will be putting this slide online on my SlideShare account, which I'm not sure if you can see because of the chairs, but it's www.slideshare.net/VGVisionary, so you can go there and you can find these slides after the talk. So just a quick disclaimer. I am not the most experienced entrepreneur. I had a lot of stuff that I've experienced for the first time last year. Just a quick disclaimer, just because I give you this advice doesn't mean that I know more than you, not at all. It just means that I've most likely done more stupid shit and made more mistakes and came out alive. So nothing in this talk is really new, but I feel like there's not enough people in the game industry that are talking about video games and running a game company from a startup perspective, hence this talk. So, quick question that you can answer for yourself, do you feel and are you prepared to run a game startup? The answer is very simple. None of us are, none of us have been, or ever will be. There's just too much stuff that happens on the way to success and to the way of establishing a company that we never see coming.
It's a bit like a mother giving a birth to a baby.
Excuse me?
It's a bit like a mother giving birth to a baby.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. No one's prepared for that. So just a quick table of contents what I'm going to talk about. So just quickly introduce myself, like who's this random dude standing on stage with a kurta on and why is he here? Then I'll go into detail about like some particular lessons. I don't have that much time. It's only like 15, 20 minutes that I have on stage. So I sadly can't go in depth, but what I'll do is I'll share a lot of valuable sources and insights that I've gathered that you hopefully can implement. And we can always talk after the talk itself. And then I'll summarize and, there'll be time for questions. I'll just go outside and you can bum rush me there so the next speaker can come up. So who am I? My name is Vlad Micu. I was formerly head of studio of a game startup in Finland called Critical Force Entertainment. I performed a full startup turnaround at that company last year and doubled its revenue, built up a new team and everything. It was an amazing experience. Before that, I've done other jobs. My resume looks kind of like a patchwork, so to speak, but there's a red line going through it in terms of building up relationships and looking for opportunities. So I have a background in industry journalism. That's how I started out, and that's what got me here. I used to write for Pocket Gamer, and that's my Twitter handle if you want to follow me. So these are kind of like the partners and the clients I've worked with. I've been all over the place. I've worked with game conferences. I've worked with incubators. I've worked with media. I've worked with a lot of game companies and startups. Even with an airline, go figure. So I've been talking to a broad palette of individuals in my past. And I'm a proud backer of Kong Fury. I'm not sure if you're aware of this amazing production that was a Kickstarter project. They just released their video clip starring David Hasselhoff today, and the movie is coming out really, really soon. I'm pretty damn excited about this. So if you haven't heard of this, you should totally check it out. So yeah, let's go to the personal lessons and most importantly, the mistakes. I've categorized these in 4 things that I'm going to quickly present to you in this talk. First of them is, of course, the importance of having clear responsibilities in your team and setting up proper agreements. Then I'll go into a bit more into the adversity and the reality of running a business, which I've, based on my experience, have underestimated, and many of my game developer friends have done so in the past as well. Then I'll talk a bit about constant growth and getting outside perspective that will help you realize where you want to go with your company. And then, of course, more importantly, I'll go into the detail of learning how to take the punches and the adversity that comes with running a company. So let's just start with this first thing. I love this book, Art of the Start by Guy Kawasaki. I feel like that's one of those pedigree books that any entrepreneur or any game developer should read, because technically any game developer that wants to publish his own games, I'm sorry, but you're automatically an entrepreneur whether you like it or not, right? You're responsible for your own income, you're responsible for your team, hence there's no way around it. I love this quote by Guy Kawasaki that I think he gave during a talk where he's like, the 3 main roles, the 3 main people you need in your startup. There's someone who can create something, obviously, the game developers, but you also need someone who can sell it. And more importantly, someone who can collect the money. Now that can be the same person, but preferably these 3 individuals are key. And as much as I love the startup atmosphere that's happening here in Bangalore, for some reason, in Silicon Valley as well, I feel like game developers for some reason never look into this angle. And the funny thing is, in Finland, all the Finnish startups have adopted the startup mentality. All the Finnish game companies, eventually when they see or smell success, end up taking on this kind of angle to how they do their business. Not all of them, but most of them. So it involves a different attitude. It involves a different vocabulary. So just a quick question. How many of you have ever used the term sustainable traction in a conversation with an investor or your team or whatnot? Raise your hand. That's 2. Cash flow positive. Anyone? Or cash flow in general. How many times have you used the word cash flow? See, that's not enough. Shareholders agreement. Anyone? No? Okay, see, 4 people again. So business plan. See, there's a point. I'm trying to make a point here. This book, Venture Deals, it's about if you go down the VC line, even if you don't want investors involved in your company, at least understand what they can offer you and make a knowledgeable choice about not chasing investment. Understand what they can bring and what they take. This is an amazing book. It's been recommended to me by every single person that I know runs a successful game startup in Finland and outside. I can highly recommend just buying it and just going through it a couple of times. It's amazing. This is a personal thing that I've made a mistake. I've made this mistake multiple times and I've been burned by it multiple times. Not having everything written down. Really try to have everything written down. In the worst case, if you're really lazy, just watch TV shows about lawyers. Right? You got Boston Legal right there with Danny Crane, my hero, and Suits, that Spectre, he gets shit done, right? Awesome shows, and funny enough, I love watching them because they get me into that mindset. In the end, you don't want to take anything to court, you want to settle. And settling means negotiating and knowing what the other person wants and has, in the worst case. But if you're really serious about building up a business, meetings, emails, contracts, save everything. Make sure that when you have an agreement with someone, it's confirmed and formalized. I've not done that a couple of times in my career, and sadly it never worked out properly, and it got me in very unpleasant situations. Use Slack. Who knows Slack? Oh, Christ. Slack is a collab software tool that just recently got a $1 billion plus valuation, I think. It's an amazing tool. It's better than Skype. Who uses Skype to communicate with his team? Yeah, use Slack. Really. It has amazing integrations. I can highly recommend it. And it has a mobile app too, so it's great. Get your licenses straight. If you have any licenses in terms of, for example, you're doing user-generated content, you want people to use your assets. TDRlegal.com is an amazing site where you get templates for licenses, and then they use every man's speak to describe to you what they mean, which is amazing if you don't have a lawyer. But personally, if you plan on making a startup that either is based on completely being funded by a VC, is self-funded, and you're doing work for hire on the side while developing your own IP, I would recommend you set aside at least $1,000 per month for legal fees in your budget. Especially if you are planning on doing a shareholders agreement or looking for investors or whatnot. But set aside, I would say, at least $10,000 to $20,000 a year for legal fees. If you're lucky, you won't need them. If you're lucky, your lawyer will never talk to you. But if you need it, let it be there. More importantly, one small addition, there's a couple of Finnish game startups that have taken the initiative where they found lawyers that were a bit more entrepreneurial, and they got the lawyers involved as advisors for equity. If you're willing to give away equity, this is an amazing way to get a counselor on your board of advisors that is going to save you a buttload of headaches if you run into adversity. Don't wait with agreements. So even these guys, even though they ended up having war with each other, they had proper agreements. And if those agreements weren't in place, I think the Second World War would have looked very, very different. And more importantly, just be a dick and demand it. Clauses can always be changed and or waived later if needed, and that happened with these guys too. But there's an amazing website, because I know, I've discussed this with a couple of people in India, there are not clear standards for this yet, especially for the game industry, but there's an amazing website from Finland called seriesc.fi that has templates, free templates of shareholders agreements. I forgot all the terminology, but all the kind of documents you need in term sheets that you need to be able to have proper agreements with your co-founders in order to not have to worry about that. The reason why I'm very adamant about this topic is because contracts are designed for assholes. And I'd rather be a dick and be insisting on getting that contract ready, because in the end, the only reason we have contracts in this world is because we can assume that someone might turn into an asshole. I have an amazing talk by Chris Natsumi from Casual Connect that I can highly recommend you watch. It's in a bigger playlist that you can click if you go to this link. You can look it up on my SlideShare. But just to illustrate what I mean by being a dick and bothering your team with getting those agreements in place in case of an asshole, I have this short video that I want to show real quick. It should illustrate and make a point about this. I need to click next. Okay, great. Wow.
We're dicks!
So
we're reckless, arrogant, stupid dicks! And the Film Actors Guild are pussies. And Kim Jong-il is an asshole. Pussies don't like dicks, because pussies get fucked by dicks. But dicks all fuck assholes. Assholes who just want to shit on everything. Pussies may think they can deal with assholes their way, but the only thing that can fuck an asshole is a dick with some balls. The problem with dicks is that sometimes they fuck too much, or fuck when it isn't appropriate. Yes, Gary, yes. And it takes a pussy to show them that. But sometimes pussies get so full of shit that they become assholes themselves. Because pussies are only 1.5 inches away from assholes. I don't know much in this crazy, crazy world. But I do know that if you don't let us fuck this asshole, we are gonna have our dicks and our pussies all covered in shit.
I've seen a lot of pussies get fucked by assholes, or shit on by assholes. And so the contracts that you have in place are to avoid that ever happens, and that if an asshole shows up or someone turns into an asshole, you can prevent them from doing too much damage. I've seen this go wrong too many times. Personally, I have been too much of a pussy, not enough of a dick, and I got fucked by, like, I got shit on by assholes too many times. Another important point that I wanted to make following that is that this is a learning process. Like, I'm not expecting any of you to suddenly have your shit together in the next couple of days based on the simple talk that I gave. The thing that I was told and for, like really, motivated by the Finnish developers that I talked to do is to never stop learning, to constantly absorb more and more information. I don't think that I've ever been in a community of entrepreneurs and game developers that was so adamant about this as the Finnish. This is an amazing course by Stanford University that they completely recorded, featuring some of the most successful startups from Silicon Valley on how to start a startup. It features like people like the founders from Airbnb come by and a lot of other startups. It's free, it's out there, and for some strange reason, the first lecture still only has 300,000 views. So clearly, there's not a lot of Indian developers looking at this because your country would, just Bangalore startup community would double this number, I think, in a day. Learn with comic relief too. Who has seen this show? Not enough people. Silicon Valley is awesome because when I was watching those episodes of this TV show, they're dead on some of the most key points of running a startup. It amazed me at how deep they went and how accurate it was. But it was comic relief, right? They were making fun of it. They were making fun of the pretentious bullshit that we have to go through in order to run a startup. But it was amazing comic relief. More importantly, that of course ties in with making sure that you have some kind of work-life balance. I had none last year. It destroyed me both physically and mentally. And make sure that you keep an eye out to your team members and know the signs if they have gone too far, because if they collapse, they might turn into an asshole or they might leave a giant hole in your operation. Find veterans and advisors, both inside of your country and outside. Pain is a relative issue. I've worked with a lot of game companies, and I've been part of a couple where a lot of the majority of the team was recently out of university. And with those kind of young talent, usually when you hit them with one finger, like, it can be a sucker punch because they're just not used to it. So get those veterans in, get your board of advisors, even if you're not looking for the VC direction. Like when Marcus Persson discovered that Minecraft was exploding, even Mojang had a board of advisors. Not a lot of people know this because they didn't put it online, but some of the biggest game companies out there have a group of advisors, even if it's just close friends, that support them and they talk to on a regular basis. If you do not have this, I highly recommend it. Get those people. Don't, like, Mike Bithell had an amazing point yesterday during his talk. He's like, you don't have to follow all the advice, but at least listen and let it give you perspective on the options you have. Wrong button. Another important thing, embrace competition. That's one of the things I loved about Finland, even though people were all making similar games, because Clash of Clans, of course, had a huge influence on it's become a genre of its own, and there's been an amazing kind of deviations on that kind of gameplay. Everyone talks to each other. Everyone shares information, and they understand that the pie is big enough. I love this quote from an amazing movie called Rush. Who has seen Rush? I know one person over there has seen Rush. Awesome. I love this this quote from Niki Lauda, who says, like, a wise man can learn more from his enemies than a fool from his friends. I'm proud to say that I've had great talks with two other competitors of the startup that I was with previously, and it's just so nice to get the confirmation that you're not the only crazy idiot that thinks that there's potential for a particular game, and in the end, they're much less of a threat than you think. A support system really helps too. Who actually has a support system that looks like this in place while you're running your company? Please raise your hand. Okay, that's worrisome. Your colleagues, a therapist, mentors and peers, a fuck ton of books, like I said, like keep on learning. Friends, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't be standing here. I would most likely be dead. These are the guys, and this is not enough, but this system is what allows me to also perform and go beyond what I believed were my boundaries and get shit done. Don't let misfortune define you, okay? My career has been based on a lot of failure, and nothing in my life compares to what this guy went through. This is Jason Everman. He was a guitarist in Nirvana, got kicked out. Then he became a guitarist in Soundgarden, got kicked out again. Those were two of the most popular bands in the late 80s, starting 90s. He didn't allow it to face him. He became a war hero. That's him. He's a spec ops guy. Read that article. It's an amazing read. The #1 skill will and always be resilience. That's what investors love, and that's what should keep you going. Learn to take the punches. The Finns have a special word for that, sisu, which stands for, it's close to the word perseverance. And they beat the Russians. They kept the Russians outside of Finland in the Second World War. It's pride. They're proud of that. And that's what keeps them going as entrepreneurs as well. Some examples of that. City Skylines just sold 1 million copies a few days ago by a company called Colossal Order. I didn't even know of it until 2009. They started in 2009. But boom, right? Maxis was announced that there were people leaving from the SimCities team, and suddenly these guys sell 1 million copies on Steam. Angry Birds is a famous tale, of course. 51 games made. Right before the company was ready to collapse, Angry Birds was created. Who knows Gunshine? That was Supercell's first game. Hardcore Facebook. All right? You don't, like, the stories that are going around of how much of a struggle Supercell went to at that time to make that work, and then how much of an effort it cost them to pivot to tablet and make Heyday and Clash of Clans, you would be amazed at the struggle. Worthy of a book. So, in summary, get your agreement straight. It will help you later on, for sure. Embrace adversity and the reality of running a business, because I know too many game developers don't do that, and you're surrounded by an amazing startup scene that you should actively be a part of here in Bangalore. Learn from them, and they will learn from you. Get both legal and outside perspective. Budget that in. Keep taking those punches, because you will eventually get there. And most importantly, talk with each other about failure. This is something that does not happen enough. I understand that the Indian culture is not very receptive to that and losing face, but we are making products for the world. We are catering to international customers. If we want to reach those people, if we want to do business with those individuals, we cannot let our cultures define how we run our companies. Entrust each other with those stories, or at least the people that are close to you. Foster that community the way that Pocket Gamer and Reliance have tried to do and have achieved by getting this event going. So, bonus tip, watch my other lectures. I have some of those on PR and marketing and stuff online on my YouTube channel. And you can contact me on these ways. You can find these slides on SlideShare later on. I'll check them on in the afternoon. And if you have any questions, I'll be outside so the next speaker can come up. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you for, that was very interesting, lots of informative practical tips from the coalface, and possibly the sweariest presentation I've ever seen in my life. So I think a round of applause for that, because that's very good indeed. Apologise for the offence, we should have put a PG-18 up in advance. Next up, I've been talking to a lot of developers here today, in the last couple of days, and outside of obviously the Indian market, it's the UK and the US markets, which everybody's talking about, really. So next to have someone to talk about some of the opportunities, some specific opportunities from the US market and beyond, I'd like to welcome, slightly less sweary, hopefully, Martine Spaans of FGL. Please give Martine.
Yes, I can assure you no body parts and everything in this presentation. What I'm going to talk about instead is casual games and the behavior of casual gaming. A bit about me and why I think that I can talk so much about casual gaming is because I've basically been involved in that side of the market for over 8 years in various different roles. And currently, I operate my own Android publishing channel, Tamalaki, which is specialized in content for women 30+. So that's the audience that really loves hidden object games, match-3, time management, puzzles, etc. The way I don't develop the games myself, I work together with like a few development teams that make the games. I talk to them basically on the usability side and monetization side. And FGL, the company I'm representing here, they provide the API and the tech and basically all the backend stuff. So we don't have to worry about that. And product cash usually works out. So casual gamers. I think what is interesting and what's also typical for the US audience and most Western European audience as well is that it's a lot of women. There's been studies that it's like 52% of all the gamers are women. And in the segment of casual gaming, that's far higher. And I mean, they monetize. This has been published by Flurry a few months ago. This is the over-index. So let's say that mid-core gamers spent 100% on in-app purchases. These players 131%. So that's the way you have to read this graph. So definitely an interesting audience to work with. So, casual gamers, obviously it can be anyone, but in general, if we have to like form a persona, it's kind of the housewives audience. They're a little bit older, they didn't grow up playing games, they're kind of new to gaming, so in that perspective, they're kind of young gamers. Often they didn't have access to a console or like a high-powered computer all their life, so they're relatively new to it with their mobile phones and tablets. They don't see themselves as gamers at all. If you ask them, like, are you a gamer? They're like, no. And you look at their behavior, and they play Candy Crush 3 hours a day. That's more than their 16-year-old son is allowed to play, Call of Duty, for example. So yeah, they don't have the latest technology. They don't have a profile on Steam. They don't have the latest iPads. They're not the first one to adopt that. So they're kind of defined as laggers on slightly slower devices often. And they absolutely don't talk about their gaming. They're not like, sitting at the hairdresser, you know what I played last night? They don't do that kind of behavior. So they kind of keep it to themselves. It's like their own little guilty pleasure. And I even experienced this myself, where I had to test a new game that I was about to publish. And I was testing it, and before I knew, I was playing it for like 2.5 hours. So it was like, oh shit, my neck was hurting. Like, wow, time flew by. So I posted something silly about it on Facebook, and I mean, a lot of my friends started commenting like, oh my god, what game is that? I want to play it too. I love those games. I know these people for like 10 years or longer. I didn't know that they were gamers. Or like more like in the industry itself. Another example. It's a quote from another friend. She said that she loves hidden object games. She plays them all the time. She never talks about it in the industry because she doesn't have the feeling that she'll be taken seriously when she says that she plays casual games. So that's not only typical for like women in the industry, but that's very typical for women all the way around, and for casual gamers all around. It could be like the men who play these kind of games as well. They just don't openly talk about it. So like I said earlier, mostly on phones, tablets, e-readers, so devices they can use for different things as well. Not like a gaming dedicated device, but something that does other things, but they can use it for gaming as well. And then it turns into primarily gaming. But yeah, like I said, not so many PC games, maybe some downloadables. There's of course still the big companies out there like Gamehouse and Big Fish who are big on downloadable content. But yeah, you won't find them on like Game4, you won't find them on Steam, those sort of things. Very scattered gaming behavior, multiple games at the same time, especially free-to-play games that limit you for a certain amount of game time a day. Short game cycles because there's always something else to do. There's always something else to focus your attention on. But it can turn into very long game sessions, like like the Candy Crush example that I gave, where people are like literally playing for hours a day. The average gameplay session that I see among my games is about 5 minutes. And I'm not sure, for the people who can compare that out there with their own mobile game stats, it's pretty long. 5 minutes sounds short, but it's really long. The motivation of these gamers is, it's not highly competitive. It's really like to connect with friends. It's like a social motivation, or to really self-improve. I've got lots of players who like reach me through the customer support email, and they tell their little story of why they game, and it's often to relax, to take their mind off things. There's, for example, a lady that said, in the summer I spent a lot of time in my garden. In the winter I play a lot of games. So I put out more than 100 games in the Google Play and Amazon stores, and I tried out different things, and really the most popular content are hidden object games, mostly tied into something else. So for example, hidden object gameplay combined with house decoration or combined with a scary story. Match 3, obviously, very popular, as we all know. And also I see that like my normal match 3 games are also less popular than the ones that have different gameplay elements combined in it. So this example, Rory's Restaurant, it's like a match 3 game where you also have to like buy new recipes and build up your restaurant and build up your reputation and all that stuff. Word games, brain training games, stuff like Words with Friends, quizzes, where you have to, quizzes that you have to take against your friends. That's very popular. Time management games is also still, it's a segment that's kind of underexplored on mobile by like the user interface design of it, but on tablet these games still also do really well. Some failures as well, because we can all learn from that. Hide and Seek with Uboli was a game, like a hidden object game combined with puzzles that had a very childish look and feel, but it was too difficult for kids. So this was totally like a mismatch between what the game projected to be and what it actually was. So that didn't do well at all. And another one that failed is like, oh, I have a cute little endless runner game. I'm sure they'll love that too. No, they didn't. It was far too kind of skill-based and far too difficult, and every time that you died, you really had to start from the beginning, and it's kind of too stressful for players who are really looking to play to relax. So that also didn't do too well at all. For those, its preference are not really anything experimental, nothing that goes very fast, nothing that's abstract. Content that they can like relate to is what works the best. My favorite slide. When you decide that you're gonna target women, don't take your like existing shooter and then turn it into something pink, or doesn't really work that way. And then an example also is a couple months ago I also went to a gaming event, and there was like a game for women lunch, and afterwards they all gave us foldable pocket mirrors with a brush. And I felt like really generalized, like, I'm here to network, to do business, to make money, to learn, but you give me a pocket brush. So it would be the same, like, I would give you all fish hooks, because you're all men, and men love fishing. When you treat your audience, try to like, not treat them in that way, try to treat them for what they like and not for what they are. Oh, this slide didn't really come out the right way, but I hope it still makes sense. So the user acquisition tools, the user acquisition tools that I use over here, some insight in that, because we all know that buying users on any platform is very expensive. I use different kind of tools in all the games that I ever published. There's like a cross-promotion interstitials. They bring in 4% of the traffic. There's a menu button that says like, that's also promoting other games, 3%. There's a general more games button. Doesn't really do well at all, 1%. Notifications, so people sign up for it. And then they get like a pop-up whenever a new game comes out, also 1%. And the various marketing stuff is all kinds of partners that we try out every once in a while to see if that works. So altogether, 10% of, on average, 10% of the users for every new game that we publish is driven, and the other 90% is organic. But we wouldn't be able to get the other 90% organic if we wouldn't invest in in like our user acquisition tools, because it's like that first spike basically that then drives up the rest. If you make sure that within the first few weeks after launch, you pump up that user install spike as high as possible, then your viral effect will be much better. So this is quite a good example. Home Makeover 2 did quite well. This is an example of a game that did not do so well because it was there were some bugs in the game. So obviously, like after our promotions, the user acquisition dropped off real fast because the game had bad ratings. The rating was like 3.5 stars. And I can tell you anything, at least for Google Play, anything under 4 stars drops immediately in terms of the amount of downloads that you get. So make sure that you keep that rating above 4 stars. And the worst example, this is what happens when you release a Christmas game after Christmas. We missed our deadline, and yeah. Oops. So yeah. But the audience is very loyal. As long as you get them into the games, they're great to work with. 46 retention rate across all games, so roughly speaking, half of the people who play my games come back to try out another one. Some stats of a game that did not have any free-to-play elements at all. Basically, Home Makeover 2, it shows advertising. There's nothing like in-app to buy, and once you reach level 100, basically you pretty much played all through it. So it's still for a game that basically sort of has an end, still pretty decent retention stats. But Blackstone Mysteries is also a hidden object game, but this one has free-to-play elements. And because of like limited energy and those kind of things every day, the retention is a lot better. So yeah, that gives us a day 30 retention of 10%, which if I talk to other developers and ask for their day 30 retention, it's actually really high. And almost 20% of our players play more than 10 sessions, so they keep coming back and back for more content. So that also proved to me that it might seem sort of evil to restrict the amount of daily plays for a gamer. But in a certain way, as long as you're not too evil with it, it does work. People do come back for more content. And just a small side note, for both of these games, these stats are all US stats. In-app purchase behavior is also slightly different for some audiences. I think the conclusion from this slide is that people on Amazon are just much easier when it comes to buying. We took Google Play GP as the index of 100, and we see that Amazon performs like double as good when it comes to the $10 chest of goods or the $8 hint stuff. So and the other stores are like comparable, nothing really stands out, but Amazon is a really good audience for that. And I definitely think that is because this audience already has a credit card. They use it to buy books and CDs and all that stuff. So it's just a one-click thing, so that's a big advantage, obviously, of the American market where the credit card penetration is very high. Half of our revenue comes from advertising. How am I doing on time? Okay. I need to rush it a bit, I see. But half of our revenue comes from advertising. There's a lot of optimization to do because this is only like a little segment of all the marketing partners that are out there, and they all say that they're the best. So it's sometimes really hard to choose. So what we basically did is, for example, we built our own optimization tool where we spend a lot of time every day to make sure we select the campaigns that give the best payouts. And that currently gives us an eCPM between $5 and $8 for interstitials and between $12 and $18 for videos. A rewarded video, so the player watches a 30-second ad and then they get like coins or something. That's an eCPM between $20 and $60. So that's something I'm really excited about. Yeah, and that's like a little idea what it did to our income as soon as we implemented those rewarded videos. The audience loves it because they get something for free, and of course we love it because of good revenues. Last thing. This is also based on our experience. Every store has a slightly different audience with the different preferences. If you want to sell your premium games, that will do well in Amazon, not so good in Google Play at all. Another developer might have different experiences with that, but us with our very casual audience, this is basically the recommendations that we have. And that's it, and now it's time for the next speaker. So
we'll have Martine and Vlad up on stage at the end of the panel session to have a chance to ask some final questions. But before the last panel session, I'd like to welcome back to the stage a man who's been working very hard all day and all week, and he's going to talk a little about a specific market that I think we can all learn from, which is the Finnish games market. It's been very successful. So please welcome, he's almost here, Mr. George Osborn, please. Can we welcome him a little bit more than that? Come on. Thank you very much. We're nearly done.
Oh, is this working? Well, that's fantastic. So yeah, so this is, I think, your last talk of the day, and I've got to get a cab very, very soon. So it's going to be Finland, but super speedy Finland. Hooray. So yeah, so I'm coming to talk to you about Finland because I think we can all agree it's kind of like the heartland of mobile gaming. This nation of 5 million people, they've managed to create Supercell and Rovio, two of the world's biggest mobile gaming brands. They've got Next Games, Seriously, Boom Lagoon, and a whole host of other venture-backed companies who look like they might be about to go big as well. And as reported by Nordic Game Bits on Pocket Gamer Biz, the industry turned over €1 billion in 2014 alone, which is remarkable. But how exactly have they gone and done it? I think the answer is that basically the unique history of the Finnish gaming industry and the broader culture around the nation as a whole has created this fertile environment for both current and future mobile gaming success. So you're probably sitting there wondering, why is the British guy stood at the front talking about Finland? Well, the reason why I am is because last year, ahead of Pocket Gamer Connects Helsinki, which was extraordinarily good fun, I helped research the Finsider track, which was about the Finnish industry, and I started writing a bit of a history on the industry itself. I didn't quite finish the history, but I did talk to an awful lot of developers from the region, and it just really gave me this clear outline about why they've managed to do so well. And in particular, it kind of helped me form a template in my mind for sort of analysing mobile gaming and just looking at a cluster or a nation and trying to work out why they're successful. So I've kind of come up with this 5-point model on this terribly formatted PowerPoint slide. But essentially, if you look at these 5 features in a particular nation or a particular country, I think it's a really useful way of trying to work out whether they're primed to succeed in mobile gaming. So obviously the factors are, number 1, what's the education like in the country? Are they a well-educated populace? Because that's going to be a really strong head start for allowing them to have the necessary development, marketing, sales, PR talent to actually push their games forward. Number 2, what's the history of the industry like? Is the industry a particular area in, say, I don't know, if you look at the UK, perhaps it's more console-oriented, but if you look somewhere else, you might be thinking, well, has this actually got an environment which allows mobile to flourish more than perhaps somewhere else? Then you've got the question about access to finance. How much money can a business get to help them out? Are tax breaks available? What's the investment scene like? And ultimately, can it support a whole host of developers as opposed to a couple of winners? Then you've got this concept of government support. Are the government actually really on board with the gaming industry? Are they really trying to seek and go and help developers? Or do they just not really care? Do they just think of gaming as a kind of small little sideline that doesn't really matter? And then lastly, you've got this fact about culture. Is there a productive work culture? Do these companies come together, share ideas and help each other out? Or are they ultimately dog eat dog and kind of don't help themselves go along? And I think when you look at these 5 points, I think it's really notable that on every count, the Finnish setup does really well. So the first one is education. So I was looking around on the internet for proof of this. And yeah, this was basically about why Finland schools are successful. And if you look on the 2009 International PISA test, you can see that in most subjects, they completely and utterly outgun the US. And that's because the Finnish education system is absolutely fantastic and marvelous. If you look at another measure, which is the Pearson Index of Cognitive Skills and Educational Achievement, the country sits at number 5 in the overall index for 2013-2014, and it's only below South Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. That means that it's well above the US, it's 9 places above the US in that measure, and it's above every single other European country as well. So they've got a really key head start. But one of the key and really interesting things about that educational development was it was basically funneled into the technology that would form the basis of the mobile industry. In the 1990s, Finland actually suffered from 20% unemployment, and that was partly due to the collapse of the USSR and trade with that. So the Finnish government looked for an area of the economy where it could grow. And the answer of where it could grow was mobile telecommunications. And the reason why they focused on telecommunications was because of a fairly obvious reason. Oh, I forgot that slide, so oops, whoopsie daisy, let's go back for a moment. So the fairly obvious reason was Nokia. So in the 1980s, I'm not sure how much you know about the history of Nokia, they were making keyboards. As in musical keyboards, not computer keyboards. They were making musical keyboards. They were making televisions. They were even making industrial quality rubber for tires. But in the late 1980s, their engineers figured out the solution that basically allowed the creation of the mobile telecommunications network. So as a result of that, they basically created the standard that became the norm across the European Union. And as a result of that, in 1991, they decided to pivot and become a handset maker. And as you can see, through the 1990s and onwards, they became one of the major global handset players. And that position lasted until the mid-2000s. So you've got a situation in Finland where there's thousands of people who are working within the mobile gaming economy. But there was more to it than that in terms of creating a cluster that was mobile gaming ready. Obviously, they had the handsets, but it doesn't really mean much unless you have the development talent, which now leads me onto this magical slide. Does anyone know what this is? Any ideas? You know what it is. Hey, he knows. So this is a haul from Demo Scene. So in Finland, it was basically this scene which encouraged developers to take on crazy development challenges and work against one another to try and see who could eke the most out of really basic devices. So whether it was a really low-end computer or something like a Texas calculator, they would basically work together, and this sort of started in the late 1980s through into the 1990s, and they would work to try and see who could create the most spectacular thing out of these basic pieces of technology. And as a result of that, you had this entire scene of developers who were used to taking something that was really basic, taking something that wasn't designed necessarily to play games, and to learn how to make games upon them. So when Nokia start developing handsets like the 6110 and the 3310, you have this whole school of developers who can look at a monochromatic phone that has buttons, that has barely any processing power, and that they're capable of making mobile games that really work. So, late 1990s, early 2000s, you see the emergence of companies like Sumeya and Mr. Good Living, who go on and become successful mobile gaming companies because they have this talent, they have this ability to take these devices, eke excellent performance out of it, and create really engaging one-button mobile games. And as a result, this kind of creates within the country as a whole this kind of mobile-first mentality. They're not tainted in the same way that the British scene perhaps was in the 1980s by the rise of home computing that really put the focus on console and PC. In Finland, you have this mentality of smart developers go to this demo scene and they create these wonderful titles. And out of interest, if you want to know some of the graduates from this demo scene, some of the people who went on to create successful mobile gaming companies, Ilkka Paananen, CEO of Supercell, the Head brothers, who went on to found Rovio. You've even got Jussi Laakkonen, who went on to found EveryPlay, which is one of the mobile advertising solutions that you might all be familiar with. So you've got that real talent coming through. And so if you're looking at this point about the history of the industry, it's gone forwards to create this great environment for people to work in. But at the same time, Finland managed to find it really easy to find financial support for these endeavors. So in the late 1990s, this is the first point. If you look at the domestic market in Finland and the amount of smartphones that were there, Finland was, according to the World Telecommunications Development Summary of 1999, one of only 2 countries where mobile phone uptake exceeded landline uptake. Now, to give you an idea about who the other country was, it was Cambodia. So Cambodia was doing the accelerated thing where, they ignore the landline development to go straight to mobile. Whereas with Finland, it was a technologically advanced country, but they were just mobile natives. So these developers had a domestic market to work to, but they also had some other important areas to help their investment finance. I think, no, that's too early, sorry. There we go, try that one again. I forgot a picture of Nokia's HQ, that was the big plan. Because I was going to mention Nokia because it's a particularly important company for funding these mobile gaming developers. Essentially, between about 2003 to 2007, the mobile gaming industry was, as a lot of people are probably very aware, in a nascent stage. It didn't have a particularly huge amount of support. It was very difficult to make money in it. The operators completely dominated the scene in the West, and if you were a mobile game developer, surviving was really difficult. But at the time, in that period, 2003 to 2007, Nokia launched the N-Gage, and they got a huge number of Finnish developers to create first-party titles for it to try and make it a viable prospect. Now, the N-Gage failed. But the result of that was that they poured a huge amount of money into the local development scene, and it allowed those developers to survive the most difficult period of the industry. So you've got Nokia providing private investment during that period. You've then also got something else that came around in 2008, 2009, which was Techers. Now this is where this slide comes in. It's the state investment body that invests in technology and innovation, and that includes mobile games. If you go onto Supercell's blog and you look through their posts about their history, they cite the fact that they got investment from Techers as a way of basically helping them to start their company up and helping them to succeed. So the government basically came in and helped these guys out. And as a result of that, they've received hundreds of millions of euros back from these companies in tax, and they've both managed to demonstrate the cause that Techers is basically fighting for as a worthy one. So this has helped developers further down the line. And then lastly, we've basically got the arrival of capital from across Europe to capitalise on the success of this scene. So London Venture Partners are one of the major companies that's gone and invested in the Finnish scene. And if you look at a company like Seriously, they've been invested in by basically companies based on the West Coast. So they've had investment partners from over there. So not only has Finland got some domestic investment, not only has it got some government support, it's also got foreign investment coming in. So developers who go and found these little companies often find finance just sort of pouring into their pockets, which is a great head start. And then after finance, we look at government support, and again, we see how Finland really benefits. So obviously, we had the mentions about education reform in the 1990s directed at telecoms, and we've had the mention of Techers. But in general, Finland's government really champions the mobile scene. So this is a picture of Alexander Stubb. He was talking at Slush last year. I was there. And he was the first man out on stage, and he's the Finnish Prime Minister. So he goes out and sets this really clear stall that there's political will in Finland to help out the technology scene in that country. But what I found was even more interesting was the second speaker to come out, and that was the Deputy Premier of China. And the reason why he was there is because Alibaba had come over to Finland to explore what the scene was like. Gung Ho's president had come over to explore what the Finnish scene was like. So this small nation, this 5 million strong nation, has managed to reach out with the help of its government to basically get China on board, get those billions of people, get that really massive superpower involved with their country, which is fantastic. And then finally, just as one last point, Vlad Micu's already talked about this. The friendly Finnish culture is invaluable to creating this really useful scene. Developers aren't in the mindset in Finland of protecting information. They don't sit there and go, we're not going to share anything. They're actually, this seems quite remarkable. The Finns are jokingly referred to as quite often as introverted, but when you go out there and you go to the scene, you'll see that there's constantly events in which people can go and meet up. There's a very active trade body called NeoGames who create all sorts of events and resources to help people out. And as a result, there's this natural sharing of information which really helps developers to succeed. And so, yeah, look, for example, this is a good example. This was at Pocket Gamer Connects Helsinki. This was the after party. Look at all of these developers happily watching the telly together. Oh, isn't it nice? Oh, yeah, exactly. Happy memories for the Pocket Gamer team. But beyond that, come on, there we go. So I've kind of tried to outline really, really quickly a template for how these sectors are going to succeed. So I've started thinking, well, if I've got this 5-step template, how does it work when I apply it to other places? So this is a bridge in Dublin, and I was in Dublin a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking, how advanced is Dublin as an island as a mobile gaming scene? And the answer is, it's not very advanced. The problem isn't for them is not that they've not got the talent. They've got this really talented development scene. Ireland's got these really great animators who basically help them to create these really engaging looking games. But the government doesn't care about the small indie developers. They don't provide any tax breaks. And if you want to get investment in Ireland for a gaming development company, you have to prove that your mobile game development company is going to provide a better return on investment than biotech. Yeah, it's just like, what's going to work? Saving thousands of people's lives or a mobile game? I don't know which one the government's going to back. So Ireland have got those problems. And whereas you look at London and you think, well, London's got a lot of things going for it. It's got this great access to finance. It's got a huge number of really talented developers, and they're really capable of coming up with great creative ideas. And there's even this whole sort of range of tax breaks. But at the moment, I feel like there's still a little bit of a stigma at times in somewhere like London towards mobile gaming, which I think is eradicating and going away. And I think that London could really do with a really big hit like you know, a Clash of Clans style hit to help really sort of propel it towards being this real mobile gaming superpower. And if I was going to put money on there being a mobile gaming hit from London, I'd probably say something like Samurai Siege from Space Ape would be a very good bet. They are venture backed, they've got investment from Sega. It looks very likely that they're going to do well. And so that, I'm afraid, was an incredibly quick and potted look at the Finnish gaming scene and looking at beyond it. And I just want to summarize by saying, why is Finland successful? I think the key question for us now is not necessarily to focus too much on that, because we know that they've got the investment to finance, the well-educated developer base, the talent, the government support, etc. I think we need to look at our own scenes and go, what more can we do to perhaps not so much be like them, but maximize our own strengths? And that's about it. Thanks very much.
So, come across George. So can we just, George has got to shoot off in a minute because he's getting a flight back to the UK. So can we have a massive, massive round of applause for George? He's the guy who's been responsible for the content of the last 2 days, and he's been involved in all our conferences. Sadly, he's not going to be around for the big finale, but you can now go. Thank you very much, George. Off we go. Just to conclude, before our final, we're doing a final kind of presentation of the People's Choice Awards for the developers later. Can I welcome to the stage the panelists for the final panel just to talk about some trends in the US and European market. So that's Martine, Vlad, and Misha, who was here. He's just at the front. There you are, sorry, I can't, the light's from your face. So please welcome these guys to the stage. We're just going to have a final quick chat. There we go, you've got mics. Come on, Vlad. What are these? So thanks, guys. Thank you guys for staying. We're going to have a short panel session now, and then we're going to bring guys in from the other track, which is finishes very shortly. Do a final kind of People's Choice and a final thank you to everybody. So thank you for sticking with us. How are you all feeling? You still got any energy left? Got one last bit? Yeah, okay, this is good. Good energy. Before I kick this off, I'm going to ask a question. So it's a bit interactive. So this is what we need to do. So I've been hearing a couple of days. Who here sees the US as the main market for their game? Hands up. Who sees the UK as the main market for their game, or a principal market? A principal market, say. Oh, nobody there, UK. And what about Europe? Okay, it's small. So who sees India as the prime market for their game? Who's coming to the wrong room and isn't making games? I don't know. There's quite a few hands have gone up there, and what I've heard a lot, and certainly in our big indie pitch and in the game hack, a lot of the games are focusing very much on UK and US. It wasn't necessarily brought out by that panel, but that's what I've been hearing all week. So I've got a quick question. So I want to look at those markets and talk about sort of trends and issues there. I mean, you guys, for ZeptoLab, is that the same thing? Is it US and UK are the massive dominant markets for you?
Well, yes and no. For Cutthroat, again, originally because the game kind of went with proliferation of iPhones and Androids together. Yeah. Yes, true. US, UK, top markets, English-speaking countries in general, do really well. For King of Thieves, for example, UK is not a top market. Yeah. Because, there are probably many reasons, but just not.
We don't like stealing things, maybe that's why. Okay, fair enough. Martin, in your experience, you talked about the US market and US casual gamers and female gamers in particular, so presumably that's US is where you target specifically.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's mainly also because of a language thing, because I'd say player behavior, I don't see much difference between the US players to the European players. Yeah. But for European players, for example, if you really want to get through the German player, you have to have a German version. So that's basically why it's easier to focus on America from that perspective, because it's all English.
Cool. And I mean, Vlad, so do you think, I'm going to ask a slightly different question, do you think this is the right focus for the Indian developers? Should the Indian developers be looking US and UK, as they're telling me they were, not today, but earlier, predominantly? Is that something that should be their focus, or not? Your take?
So just to give a quick answer on the first question from the perspective of quick. because it was a more forgiving environment for a game that was not 100% ready yet. Like if you have a multiplayer game, Android was, like Google Play was more forgiving for games that were still in development, right? And we saw that there were amazing pockets for first-person shooters in Brazil, Russia, Korea, Argentina, Poland, US as well. But it was much more spread out, and then of course it has to do with the fact that the game Critical Strike Portable was inspired by Counter that has like that reaches everyone, everywhere. That's a universal kind of genre. But in terms of your second question, directed particularly to me, so I was also involved with a startup in Thailand back in 2000, a game startup in Thailand back in 2012. And those guys nowadays are focusing particularly on the Thai market. Now, everyone's talking about how China is growing. No one's talking about India. So I've already talked to a couple of game developers that have decided to fully focus on the Indian market. But in Finland, when I was in Finland, we had a population of 5.5 million. I think George did a great job explaining what was going on there. So you can't develop for the local market. It's too tiny, and you know, in Russia, there's a lot of game developers in Russia that have developed for the Russian market and then discovered that it wasn't monetizable properly, and then companies like Game Insight popped up. Game Insight is a big publisher that first focused on the Russian market and helping Russian developers in Russia, and now they publish internationally, right? Yeah. So from my perspective, I would encourage everyone to not focus on their own market, but try to take up that standard of international, Western-focused quality. I think that from the games that were in the Indie Showcase, any single one of them could have come out of any Western country. That's the bar that you have to set for yourself. And there's a bonus to focusing on your own country, but aim high. I mean, you can always do that.
I think the counter argument to that, because I've been having the conversation both ways actually.
Yeah, no, it's 50-50, right?
Because the counter argument is there's a lot of people focusing on the global market, some of whom have much more money and many, many more years of experience, or most of them do. Yep. Whereas people don't know about the people in India have a massive advantage in the Indian market because they know the culture, they know the customs, the trend, obviously there's a stereotype of Bollywood and cricket, and there's more than that, but even in those two areas, it's harder for someone to come out externally and ace that, whereas like Indian companies can ace that. So
totally true, but the first ever Indian game developer that I met was Shailesh Prabhu, who you all know because of Hubrix and Social Ball, and he was, for me, from that moment on, like, he set the standard for me of what I would expect from an indie in India. Sure. And from there on, I met a lot of different developers that either reached that point or tried to go beyond it. And so I've always kind of was proud of him because when he launched his game, Hubrix, in 2012, and back then I was an industry journalist and I wrote about him, there was nothing that in his game or in his attitude that was culturally specific. We all watch the same shows. We all have seen Breaking Bad or look at the same websites on the internet. The people that I've met at these game conferences here in India since 2012, they are as Western as can be.
Sure.
So it's really about finding your blue ocean in this massive, massive app store mess that is out there. But then again, I mean, it's the biggest platform out there.
It is. I mean, just to pull it back a little bit, we were talking about UK, US, talking about Europe a little bit, sort of. I mean, and Finland. I mean, Martine and Vlad, obviously you're Europeans. We're all probably Europeans. We're not like UK. I'm very British, but you talked about the German market and having to localize for that. Nobody here I've been speaking to is really speaking about Europe so much. It's been more about the UK. Are they missing a trick by not looking at Germany and France and Italy and Spain and just focusing purely, on English language stuff? Do you think there's a big opportunities there that guys should be considering?
Well, what's also important to consider is, for example, what kind of game you're making.
Sure.
If you're focusing on a strategy game, then I say, don't go Germany first because there's, you know, good games and Blue Byte and, you know, all those. There's already lots of strategy games out there.
That's
fully
what they like
localized
strategy games, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, so it's also important, like, what kind of game you're making. And I think that, yeah, like I said earlier, like, when you look culturally, Europe and America are not that different. The difference is really in the details. So I think a lot of developers that say, oh, I'm going to focus on the US, kind of have Europe as a secondary audience.
Yeah.
I mean, the only really games that I've seen that are really on Europe first are seasonal games, like for the, you know, soccer, for example, like the Euro Cup.
Football, I believe it's known as, but thank you very much.
You know, I publish for the American market, so for me it's soccer.
It's soccer in the American market. You were saying, Misha, about ZeptoLabs. You've got different audiences. I mean, is that just, you just see where the pickup's been, or you've deliberately kind of targeted different global markets?
Okay, when we came out again, that was there was almost no choice. I mean, we just put 5 languages in, right? Right now we put, I don't know how many languages, but many, and it's cheap. And I encourage you strongly to do that. Support languages, people love that. Second of all, there are, you know, like for example, when we launched King of Thieves, we did a special PR in France. Worked beautifully. Because they got an attention, you know, gamers there, you know, had to read about the game in their own language, right? And again, it's cheap. We will do more often of that. I mean, more of that in Germany.
So you specifically launched it. We didn't launch it in France specifically, but you did a particular press release.
No, we launched it. Yeah, we launched it around the world. But in France, we just did a, you know, PR in addition to the global PR that we used to do. Another recipe I might suggest here is that, look, you know, I have a different view in terms of focusing on local markets, but you know, you can play it in 2 ways. You might as well just launch global and see where you pick up and focus there. Because you can't fight all the battles. It's really, really difficult, right? But sometimes you'll see your games pop up in weird places. And if you think it's Saudi Arabia, for example, is a weird place, think again, because it pays like crazy. So you find successes in very many places in the world where other people just don't look. And secondly, you come to, you know, don't focus on Indian market, but do focus on Indian market, because the global players will focus on it. You'll be crushed if you don't. That's very simple.
Fair enough. That's a scary approach to the whole thing. Okay, I want to. George talks a bit about the Finnish model, and I think it's fair to say that there is such a thing now as the Finnish model. People are talking about how, you know, a combination of factors has come together to create this incredible development environment with many successes. Is that, my wife actually works in academia, and there's a thing in urban redesign called the Barcelona model, where people try to emulate how Barcelona redesigned around the Olympics there. It's quite hard to emulate, as it turns out. Do you think the Finnish model, George was talking about, do you think the Finnish model is something that these guys can kind of learn from, and actually, is there stuff we can pick up from that, or is it just that's a unique situation? I know George isn't here, but he was going to say, let's go.
I can say, from having been there for a year, that it's definitely reproducible. You don't need the government support. You don't need about 4 of the 5 points. I think the most important point, and I tried to stress it at the very end of my presentation, is the community. It's the standard of which you operate with each other. You share the information. Behind closed doors, fine. In trust with just a few people, fine. But the level of hospitality that I received as a foreigner in India, in your community, when I came here in 2012 and have been coming back, equals or is even higher than the Finnish. But the terms of openness and the terms of having the door open to their office, like Martine has visited Finland a couple of times herself. She can share on this. The hospitality that we had in terms of business insight, in terms of how open people shared knowledge, numbers, contacts with each other, to the point of giving you the benefit of the doubt. But if you would have screwed someone over, you would be out. So there's this very tight-knit group that accepts outsiders. Every one of you can go to Finland and meet these individuals, and they will be open to you. They will share, and that's the most important part, the community. The rest is a bonus, but that's what I experienced was the pinnacle of the Finnish model.
Okay. So we have no time for questions then? No. Okay, sorry. I timed that incredibly badly because the whole point was 4 questions, but I think we've overrun a little bit today. We've got to move into the final part of the day. So sorry about that, guys. I didn't get to open it.
Okay, I'll just make sure.
Okay, so basically, I'd like to say thank you to my very short panel. Sorry about that, guys. But we can have a round of warm applause for them.